Welcome to Criminal Nights, where the shadows hold secrets and sleep comes only after justice is served. I'm your host, and tonight we dive into the depths of human darkness, exploring cases that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the people around you. If you're ready to journey into the criminal mind, hit that subscribe button and join our community of truth seekers, because once you enter these criminal nights, there's no turning back. The fluorescent lights flickered in the abandoned warehouse at 2:47 a.m. on October 15th, 2019. Detective Sarah Chen stood among the scattered evidence, her flashlight cutting through the darkness like a knife through silence. The metallic smell of blood mixed with industrial chemicals created a nauseating cocktail that would haunt her for months to come. "We've got 3 bodies," her partner whispered, his voice barely audible above the creaking metal, all positioned exactly 12 feet apart, all facing east. But it wasn't the bodies that made Detective Chen's blood run cold. It was what wasn't there. The 4th victim, the one they'd been searching for during the past 72 hours, had vanished without a trace. This is the story of the vanishing hour, a case that would expose a web of deception so intricate, so carefully woven, that it took investigators 3 years to unravel. A story about trust, betrayal, and the terrifying realization that monsters don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes they hide in plain sight. Millbrook, Pennsylvania, population 15,847, a quiet suburban town where neighbors know each other's names, where children still play outside until streetlights come on, and where the most exciting news usually involves the annual Harvest Festival, the kind of place where people move to escape the chaos of city life, seeking safety and community. It was here, in this picture-perfect slice of American tranquility, that 4 friends would gather for what they believed would be a simple business meeting. Only 3 would leave alive, and one would disappear entirely, as if swallowed by the earth itself. Marcus Williams, 34, a successful real estate developer with a wife and 2 young children. His colleagues described him as methodical, trustworthy, the kind of man who'd give you the shirt off his back. Rebecca Torres, 29, a rising star in the marketing world, known for her infectious laugh and unwavering loyalty to her friends. David Park, 31, a tech entrepreneur whose startup had just secured $1 million investment. 3 lives on the rise, 3 futures full of promise. And then there was the 4th member of their group, Elena Vasquez, 33, a forensic accountant, whose sharp mind had helped numerous businesses untangle their most complex financial puzzles. Elena, who should have been there that night, but whose absence would become the key to everything. The meeting was scheduled for 11 p.m., an unusual time, but these 4 had been friends since college, and late-night gatherings weren't uncommon for their tight-knit group. They'd rented the warehouse on the outskirts of town for what Marcus had described in his text messages as the opportunity of a lifetime. The warehouse belonged to Millbrook Industrial Holdings, a company that had been defunct for nearly 2 years. Its empty halls and abandoned offices provided the perfect cover for private discussions, or so they thought. At 10:45 p.m., Marcus arrived first, his luxury sedan's headlights cutting through the October darkness. Security cameras from a nearby business would later show Rebecca's car pulling in at 10:52 p.m., followed by David at 10:58 p.m. 3 vehicles, 3 friends, 3 people walking into what would become their final destination. But Elena never showed up. Her phone had gone straight to voicemail since 6 p.m. that evening. Her apartment was empty, her car missing from the parking garage. It was as if Elena Vasquez had simply ceased to exist. What the 3 friends didn't know was that their trusted 4th member, the woman they'd known for over a decade, the woman they'd trusted with their deepest secrets and biggest dreams, had been living a lie so elaborate, so perfectly constructed, that even those closest to her had never suspected the truth. By midnight, when none of the 3 had returned home, their families began to worry. By 1 a.m., The first 911 call was made. By 2:30 a.m., Millbrook police had located the warehouse. And by 2:47 a.m., Detective Sarah Chen was standing in that flickering light, staring at a crime scene that would challenge everything she thought she knew about human nature. But here's what makes this case truly terrifying. The killer had been planning this moment for 3 years. Every friendship, every shared meal, every late-night conversation had been part of an elaborate setup. And Elena Vasquez, the missing fourth friend, wasn't a victim at all. She was the architect of their destruction. Next time on Criminal Nights, we'll explore Elena's past and uncover the shocking truth about who she really was, and why 3 innocent people had to die for her secret to remain buried. Elena Vasquez had always been the perfect friend, the kind of person who remembered birthdays, who showed up with soup when you were sick, who listened without judgment during your darkest moments. For 12 years, she had been the glue that held their college friend group together. But Elena Vasquez was a ghost. 3 days after the warehouse massacre, Detective Chen sat in the sterile conference room of the Millbrook Police Department, surrounded by boxes of evidence and a growing sense of unease. The preliminary investigation into Elena's background had yielded results that defied logic. Her social security number was issued in 2007. Detective Martinez reported, his voice tight with confusion. But here's the problem. It was issued to a 67-year-old woman named Elena Rodriguez, who died in a car accident in Phoenix the same year. The birth certificate was fake. The college transcripts were fabricated with such precision that Penn State University had no record of detecting the fraud. Even her apartment lease, her bank accounts, her credit history, all of it built on a foundation of lies so sophisticated that it had fooled everyone for over a decade. We ran her fingerprints through every database we have access to. Chen continued, spreading crime scene photos across the table. No matches. It's like she materialized out of thin air in 2007 and lived a completely fabricated life until last Tuesday. But who was she really? And why had she spent 12 years befriending 3 innocent people only to orchestrate their brutal murders? The answer lay buried in a cold case file from Chicago, dated 15 years earlier, in 2004. Isabella Martinez was 19 years old and working as a bookkeeper for Meridian Construction, a mid-sized company that specialized in commercial real estate development. She was brilliant with numbers, quiet but observant, the kind of employee who noticed discrepancies that others missed. It was this attention to detail that led Isabella to discover that Meridian's owner, Thomas Chen, Detective Sarah Chen's uncle, had been embezzling funds from construction projects, leaving buildings structurally unsound and putting hundreds of lives at risk. Isabella compiled evidence meticulously: bank records, falsified inspection reports, correspondence between Thomas Chen and corrupt city officials. She built an airtight case and presented it to federal investigators. Believing she was doing the right thing, Thomas Chen was arrested, tried, and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. 3 buildings were evacuated and demolished. Dozens of families lost their life savings, and Isabella Martinez became the most hated person in Chicago's construction community. They called her a snitch, a troublemaker, former FBI agent Robert Hayes recalled. She received death threats daily. Someone threw a brick through her apartment window with a note that said, "Dead girls can't testify." The Witness Protection Program offered Isabella a new identity, but she declined. She wanted to rebuild her life on her own terms, to prove that doing the right thing was worth the cost. That decision nearly killed her. On March 15, 2005, Isabella Martinez was walking home from her new job at a downtown accounting firm when a black sedan jumped the curb. The driver, later identified as Vincent Torino, one of Thomas Chen's former business partners, had intended to silence Isabella permanently. Instead, he killed her 6-year-old nephew, Miguel, who had been walking beside her. Isabella survived with severe injuries and psychological trauma that would reshape her forever. But the little boy who looked up to her, who called her Tia Bella, and dreamed of becoming an astronaut, was gone, and with Miguel's death, something inside Isabella Martinez died too. The official record shows that Isabella Martinez left Chicago in 2006, destination unknown. Victim services lost track of her. The FBI closed her file. She became another casualty of a system that failed to protect those who chose justice over silence. But Isabella hadn't disappeared. She had transformed. Somewhere between Chicago and Pennsylvania, between 2006 and 2007, Isabella Martinez had studied identity theft techniques with the same obsessive precision she'd once applied to financial records. She learned how to create documents, how to establish credit histories, how to build a past that never existed. And she chose a target for her new life. The nephew of the man who had destroyed her world. Detective Sarah Chen had never met her Uncle Thomas. Her father's family had disowned him after his conviction, refusing to speak his name or acknowledge his existence. Sarah had built her career in law enforcement partly to distance herself from his legacy, to prove that the Chen name could stand for justice rather than corruption. She had no idea that her uncle's victim had been watching her, studying her, learning everything about her life and career. Elena Vasquez, the woman who had never existed, had chosen her friends carefully. Marcus Williams specialized in commercial real estate, just like Thomas Chen. Rebecca Torres worked in marketing, helping businesses rebuild their public image after scandals. David Park developed security software for financial institutions. Each of them represented a piece of the system that had failed Isabella Martinez 15 years earlier. For 3 years, Elena cultivated these friendships with surgical precision. She attended Marcus's children's birthday parties, helped Rebecca through her divorce, celebrated David's business successes. She became indispensable to their lives while secretly documenting their routines, their fears, their vulnerabilities. The warehouse meeting wasn't about a business opportunity. It was about revenge, cold, calculated, and 15 years in the making. But as Detective Chen stared at the evidence spread across the conference table, one question haunted her more than all the others. If Elena had wanted revenge against her uncle's legacy, why hadn't she targeted Sarah directly? The answer would prove more terrifying than anyone could have imagined, because Elena's plan wasn't finished. The warehouse murders were just the beginning. Elena's transformation from victim to predator hadn't happened overnight. After fleeing Chicago in 2006, she had spent months in Detroit, living in abandoned buildings and stealing food to survive. The physical wounds from the car accident healed, but the psychological scars ran deeper than bone. She would wake up screaming Miguel's name, reliving that moment when the black sedan mounted the sidewalk. In her nightmares, she could still hear the sickening impact, could still smell the metallic scent of blood mixing with gasoline on the asphalt. But grief, Isabella discovered, could be weaponized. I found her in January 2007, recalled Dr. Patricia Hoffman, a psychiatrist who ran a free clinic in Detroit's most dangerous neighborhood. She came in asking for sleeping pills, said she couldn't stop the nightmares. But when I started talking to her, I realized this wasn't just trauma. This was rage refined into something much more dangerous. Isabella told Dr. Hoffman that she was Elena Vasquez, a recent college graduate looking for a fresh start. The lie came so naturally that even trained mental health professionals couldn't detect the deception. She attended therapy sessions religiously, not to heal, but to learn how to manipulate emotions, how to read people's deepest vulnerabilities. She asked very specific questions. Dr. Hoffman remembered. How do you build trust with someone who's been betrayed? How do you make someone feel safe when they're actually in danger? At the time, I thought she was trying to understand her own trauma. Now I realize she was learning to become the perfect predator. While attending therapy, Isabella worked nights at a 24-hour copy shop, studying identity theft techniques between customers. She learned that the key to a successful false identity wasn't just forged documents. It was creating a believable history that could withstand scrutiny. She chose Elena Vasquez because the woman had died alone, with no family to notice discrepancies. Isabella spent weeks in Phoenix, visiting the cemetery where the real Elena was buried, memorizing details from her headstone, researching her life story. Then she improved upon it. The real Elena Rodriguez had been a quiet woman who worked at a grocery store and had no college education. The fictional Elena Vasquez was brilliant, ambitious, someone people would remember and respect. Isabella crafted transcripts from Penn State University with such precision that she actually enrolled in continuing education courses to make her knowledge authentic. By 2009, Elena Vasquez had established herself in Philadelphia's accounting community. She was known for her exceptional attention to detail, her ability to spot financial irregularities that others missed. Clients trusted her implicitly, often sharing personal information that went far beyond professional boundaries. It was during this time that Elena began her real research. Thomas Chen's case had been extensively covered in trade publications. Isabella memorized every detail, the names of his business partners, his family members, his associates. She learned that his nephew, Sarah Chen, had become a police officer in Pennsylvania, apparently trying to redeem the family name, but her interest in Sarah went deeper than simple revenge. She began to see Sarah as a kindred spirit, another woman trying to survive in a system that protected the corrupt and punished the honest. The breakthrough came in 2016, when Elena was hired to audit the books for a marketing firm that had been hired by Sarah's police department. It was a routine job, but it gave Elena access to personnel files, including Sarah's psychological evaluation reports. What she read changed everything. Sarah Chen suffered from survivor's guilt, not because she had survived anything, but because she felt responsible for carrying the family name while her uncle rotted in prison. She worked twice as hard as her colleagues, took dangerous assignments, pushed herself to the breaking point, trying to prove that she wasn't like Thomas. Elena realized that Sarah was already punishing herself more effectively than any external revenge could accomplish, so she changed her plan. Instead of targeting Sarah directly, Elena would force her to experience the same helplessness Isabella had felt in Chicago. She would kill people Sarah cared about, people who represented the system that had failed them both, and make Sarah watch as justice slipped through her fingers. The warehouse murders weren't random acts of violence. They were a carefully choreographed performance designed to traumatize Detective Sarah Chen in the most personal way possible. Marcus Williams was killed first, shot execution style in the back of the head while kneeling. His body was positioned to face east toward Chicago, where Thomas Chen sat in his federal prison cell. Rebecca Torres was strangled with a length of rope that Elena had taken from the construction site where Miguel died. Her body was arranged 12 feet away, the exact distance Miguel had been from Isabella when the car struck him. David Park suffered the longest. Elena used a knife she had purchased in Detroit, where she had first planned her revenge. She carved the number 2004 into his chest, the year Isabella Martinez's life had been destroyed. But Elena's masterpiece wasn't the murders themselves. It was the message she left for Detective Chen, carved into the warehouse's concrete floor. Directly between the three bodies was a single sentence: "Justice delayed is justice denied." It was a quote Thomas Chen had used in his own defense during his trial, claiming that the slow pace of the investigation had prejudiced his case. Isabella had sat in that courtroom, listening to her victimizer twist the concept of justice into a weapon against her. Now Elena was using the same words to announce her presence too. Thomas Chen's niece. But there was something else Detective Chen hadn't found yet. Something that would prove Elena's plan was far more elaborate than anyone had imagined. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the warehouse's abandoned office was a manila envelope containing photographs. Dozens of them, taken over the course of 3 years. Pictures of Marcus with his children, Rebecca at her favorite coffee shop, David working late in his office, and at the bottom of the stack, pictures of Detective Sarah Chen walking to her car, entering her apartment building, sitting at her desk at the police station. Alina had been watching all of them, studying their routines, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The photographs were numbered, but not in chronological order. They were numbered in the order Alina planned to kill them. Marcus was number 1. Rebecca was number 2. David was number 3. Detective Sarah Chen was number 7, which meant Alina wasn't finished. There were 3 more people on her list. 3 more targets she planned to eliminate before finally confronting the woman who had unknowingly become the focus of her 15-year obsession. And, as Detective Chen would soon discover, she knew all 3 of them personally. The photographs haunted Detective Chen's dreams. She had stared at them for hours, trying to understand Elena's methodology, searching for patterns that might reveal the identity of victims 4, 5, and 6. The numbering system wasn't random. Alina had arranged her targets in a specific sequence, each death building toward a final confrontation. But who were the remaining victims, and why had Alina chosen them? The answer came from an unexpected source. Detective Chen. The voice belonged to Maria Santos, a victim's advocate who had worked Isabella Martinez's case in Chicago 15 years earlier. I've been following the news about your warehouse murders. There's something you need to know about Isabella Martinez that wasn't in the official files. They met at a diner outside Millbrook, away from the media circus that had descended on the small town. Maria looked older than her 53 years, worn down by decades of fighting a system that rarely protected the people who needed it most. Isabella wasn't just a bookkeeper who stumbled onto Thomas Chen's embezzlement, Maria explained, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup that had long since gone cold. She was recruited by us, by the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The revelation hit Chen like a physical blow. Recruited? You mean she was working undercover? Informally? Yes. Isabella had approached us 6 months before she gathered evidence against your uncle. She suspected something was wrong with Meridian Construction's books, but she needed guidance on what to look for and how to document it properly. Maria pulled out a worn manila folder, the same type Alina had used to store her photographs. Inside were documents Chen had never seen before, communications between Isabella and FBI handlers, detailed instructions on evidence collection, promises of protection that were never fulfilled. We told her she'd be safe, Maria continued, her voice heavy with guilt. We promised witness protection, relocation, a new identity if necessary. But when Thomas Chen's associates started making threats, when that brick came through her window, bureaucracy got in the way. Isabella's case was transferred between departments. Her protection request got lost in paperwork. So when Vincent Torino tried to kill her, we weren't there. We failed her completely. And when Miguel died, Isabella blamed us as much as she blamed Thomas Chen and his associates. The implications crashed over Chen in waves. Elena's targets weren't just random representatives of a corrupt system. They were specifically chosen to represent the people who had failed Isabella Martinez when she needed them most. Maria, I need the names of everyone who worked Isabella's case. FBI agents, prosecutors, victim advocates, everyone. Detective. Most of these people have moved on. Different cities, different careers. Some have retired. I don't care. Elena's been planning this for 15 years. If she wanted to find them, she found them. The list Maria provided contained 12 names. Chen cross-referenced them with missing persons reports, unexplained deaths, and cold cases from across the country. What she found made her blood run cold. Agent Robert Hayes, The FBI investigator who had handled Isabella's case had died in a car accident in Denver 2 years earlier. The accident report noted that his brake lines had been severed, but local police attributed it to vandalism rather than attempted murder. Prosecutor Janet Morrison had been found dead in her Chicago apartment 6 months ago, apparently the victim of a home invasion robbery. Nothing was taken except her laptop and phone, and the case remained unsolved. Victim advocate Daniel Rodriguez had disappeared from his Phoenix home 4 months earlier. His car was found abandoned in the desert, but his body was never recovered. 3 deaths that appeared unrelated, spread across multiple states and jurisdictions. But Chen now recognized Elena's signature in each case. The meticulous planning, the symbolic elements, the way each murder reflected the victim's specific failure in Isabella Martinez's case. She's been killing them for years, Chen realized. The warehouse murders weren't the beginning. They were the grand finale. Elena had spent over a decade systematically eliminating everyone who had failed Isabella Martinez. The FBI agents who promised protection but delivered betrayal. The prosecutors who let bureaucracy delay justice. The victim advocates who moved on to other cases while Isabella's life fell apart. But Elena had saved the most personal targets for last. Chen returned to the photographs, studying them with new understanding. If Elena had been killing people for years, why photograph Marcus, Rebecca, and David so extensively? Why invest 3 years in building relationships with them before striking? The answer lay in their professions. Marcus Williams didn't just work in real estate. He specialized in government contracts, the same type of construction projects Thomas Chen had corrupted. Rebecca Torres didn't just work in marketing. Her firm handled crisis management for financial institutions caught in embezzlement scandals. David Park didn't just develop security software. His company's programs were used by federal agencies to track financial crimes. Elena had chosen them because they represented the system that had evolved since Isabella Martinez's case. They were the new generation of professionals who claimed to prevent the type of corruption that had destroyed Isabella's life. And Elena wanted to prove that nothing had really changed. The warehouse murders were a demonstration, a proof of concept. Elena was showing Detective Chen that the system was still broken. That the people who claimed to protect whistleblowers and victims were just as vulnerable as Isabella had been. But who were victims 4, 5, and 6? And why was Detective Chen number 7 instead of the final target? The answer came when Chen's phone rang at 2:17 a.m. Detective Chen, this is Captain Williams from Chicago PD. We've got a situation here that might be connected to your case. Thomas Chen was found dead in his cell at the federal penitentiary 3 hours ago. Chen's hands trembled as she gripped the phone. How did he die? That's the strange part. He was poisoned, but the delivery method was ... elaborate. Someone had been sending him books through the prison's approved vendor program. The pages were treated with a slow-acting toxin that absorbed through skin contact. He'd been dying slowly for weeks without knowing it. Who sent the books? They were ordered online and paid for with a credit card registered to Elena Vasquez. But here's what's really disturbing, Detective. The last book he received was a biography of Isabella Martinez, a book that doesn't exist in any library or bookstore database. Elena had written Isabella's story herself, creating a personalized biography that chronicled every detail of Thomas Chen's betrayal and its consequences. She had forced him to read about Miguel's death, about Isabella's suffering, about the 15 years of planning that had led to this moment. Thomas Chen had died knowing exactly who was killing him, and why. But his death created a new problem for Detective Chen. If Thomas Chen was dead, who were the remaining targets on Elena's list? The answer would force Chen to confront a truth she had spent her entire career trying to avoid. Sometimes, the pursuit of justice required becoming the very thing you swore to fight against, because Elena's final targets weren't strangers. They were the three people Detective Sarah Chen trusted most in the world. The realization came to Detective Chen at 3:47 a.m. as she sat in her kitchen staring at crime scene photos and personnel files scattered across her dining table. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she barely noticed. Her mind was racing through connections, patterns, possibilities she had refused to consider. Until now, Elena's target list wasn't just about the people who had failed Isabella Martinez. It was about the people who had shaped Detective Sarah Chen's life and career. The three remaining photographs had been deliberately obscured, faces turned away from the camera or captured in shadow. Chen had assumed this was careless surveillance work, but now she understood it was intentional. Elena wanted Chen to discover the identities herself, to experience the same helpless realization that Isabella had felt when she understood the true scope of the conspiracy against her. Chen picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in months. Detective Chen. Jesus, it's almost 4 a.m. What's wrong? The voice belonged to Captain Michael Rodriguez, Chen's former supervisor and mentor. He had been the one to recruit her to the Millbrook Police Department 8 years earlier. The one who had guided her through her first homicide case. The one who had recommended her for the detective position. Mike, I need you to listen carefully. Don't go to work today. Don't follow your normal routine. Find somewhere safe and call me when you get there. Sarah, you're scaring me. What's this about Elena Bosquez? The woman we've been hunting. I think you're on her list. There was a long pause. Chen could hear Rodriguez's breathing change, becoming shallow and rapid. That's impossible. I've never heard of Elena Vasquez. But you knew Isabella Martinez. Another pause, longer this time. When Rodriguez spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. How did you find out about that? The pieces fell into place, with sickening clarity. In 2005, Officer Michael Rodriguez had been working gang crimes in Chicago when the FBI approached his department for assistance with the Thomas Chen investigation. Isabella Martinez had been receiving death threats, and federal agents needed local police support for surveillance and protection. Rodriguez had been assigned as Isabella's police liaison. He was supposed to coordinate security, monitor threats, ensure her safety during the investigation and trial. He had been Isabella's primary contact with law enforcement. The person she called when she was scared. The person who promised that the system would protect her. But on March 15, 2005, when Isabella and Miguel were walking home from dinner, Rodriguez had been 20 miles away, investigating a gang shooting that later proved to be a false alarm. The surveillance team that should have been watching Isabella had been reassigned to another case. The protection that had been promised existed only on paper. She called me that night, Rodriguez admitted, his voice breaking. Isabella called me at 7:30 p.m., said she felt like someone was watching her. She was scared to go home alone. I told her I'd send a patrol car, but there was a multiple homicide downtown, and all our units were tied up. So you left her unprotected. I made a judgment call. The gang shooting seemed more urgent. I thought Isabella was just being paranoid, seeing threats that weren't there. I was wrong. And when Miguel died, I was the one who had to tell Isabella that the patrol car never came. I was the one who had to explain why the system failed her. She looked at me with these eyes, like she couldn't understand how someone could promise protection and then just walk away. Rodriguez had left Chicago 6 months after Miguel's death, unable to face the guilt of his failure. He had transferred to Pennsylvania, to a small department where gang violence was rare and the mistakes seemed smaller. He had never spoken about the Isabella Martinez case, never mentioned it in his personnel file or during interviews. But Elena had found him anyway. Mike, you need to understand something. Elena isn't just planning to kill you. She's planning to make me watch. You're victim number 5 on her list, and I'm number 7. She wants me to experience the same helplessness Isabella felt. Wants me to know that I can't protect the people I care about. Jesus Christ. Who else is on the list? Chen already knew, but saying the names aloud made the nightmare real in a way that silent understanding couldn't. Dr. Patricia Hoffman, the psychiatrist who treated Isabella in Detroit. Alina learned manipulation techniques from her, learned how to read people's vulnerabilities. She's victim number 4. Chen had already tried calling Dr. Hoffman's clinic. The phone rang endlessly. No answer, no voicemail message. Local Detroit police had agreed to perform a welfare check, but Chen knew what they would find. In number 6, Maria Santos, the victim's advocate who met with me yesterday. She's the one who told me about Isabella's recruitment by the FBI, about all the promises that were broken. Maria had seemed nervous during their meeting, glancing frequently at her phone, checking the parking lot through the diner's windows. Chen had attributed it to paranoia, the occupational hazard of someone who worked with crime victims. Now she realized Maria had been right to be afraid. Alina had been watching that meeting, probably from across the street or through the diner's windows. She had seen Maria hand over the files, had witnessed the moment when Detective Chen began to understand the true scope of Isabella's betrayal. So she kills me, then Maria, then you, Rodriguez said. What's the end game? What does she get from this? Justice, Chen replied. At least her version of it. She wants to prove that the system hasn't changed, that the people who promise protection will always fail when it matters most. But there was something else, something Chen was only beginning to understand. Elena's plan wasn't just about revenge, it was about transformation. She wanted to turn Detective Sarah Chen into Isabella Martinez, to force her to experience the same trauma, the same loss, the same systemic betrayal. And then what? Did Alina expect Chen to disappear like Isabella had, to spend 15 years planning her own elaborate revenge? Or was there a different ending to this story? Chen's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Check your email. The message that appeared in her inbox contained a single attachment, a video file labeled "Watch Me." Chen hesitated for only a moment before clicking play. The video showed Dr. Patricia Hoffman's office, filmed from a hidden camera positioned behind her desk. The timestamp indicated it was recorded 3 days earlier, just hours after the warehouse murders had been discovered. Dr. Hoffman sat across from someone whose face wasn't visible to the camera, but Chen recognized the voice immediately. You helped me understand that revenge isn't about getting even, Alina said, her tone conversational, almost friendly. It's about achieving balance. Isabella Martinez lost everything because people failed to keep their promises. So now those people need to understand what that loss feels like. You're talking about murder, Dr. Hoffman replied, her voice steady, despite the obvious fear. This isn't therapy, Elena. This is a confession. Is it? Or is it justice finally being served? The video lasted 18 minutes. Chen watched in growing horror as Elena systematically dismantled Dr. Hoffman's psychological defenses, using techniques the psychiatrist had taught her 15 years earlier. Elena didn't threaten violence. She didn't need to. She simply explained, with clinical precision, how each person on her list had contributed to Isabella Martinez's destruction. And then she asked Dr. Hoffman a question that made Chen's blood run cold. Doctor, in your professional opinion, what happens to someone who experiences the same trauma that destroyed Isabella Martinez? Do they break like she did, or do they find a way to become stronger? The video ended with Elena's hand reaching toward the camera, blocking the lens before the recording stopped. Chen immediately called Detroit police, but she already knew what they would tell her. Dr. Hoffman's body had been found that morning. Apparent suicide by overdose. No signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. Alina had convinced her to kill herself. Chen stared at her phone, understanding with crystalline clarity that she was running out of time. Alina wasn't just killing people. She was perfecting her technique, learning from each murder. preparing for the final confrontation. And Chen was walking directly into a trap that had been 15 years in the making. Detective Chen barely slept for the next 48 hours. Every phone call could be news of another body. Every shadow could hide Elena's watching eyes. She had arranged protection for Captain Rodriguez and was desperately trying to locate Maria Santos, who had seemingly vanished from her Phoenix apartment. But Elena was always one step ahead. The call came at 6:23 a.m. on Thursday morning. Detective Martinez's voice was tight with controlled panic. "Chen, we found Maria Santos." "Where?" "That's the problem. She's alive. She's sitting in our interrogation room. Claims she's been here for 3 hours, waiting to talk to you specifically." Chen felt ice form in her stomach. 3 hours? How did she get into the building? She walked through the front door at 3 a.m., told the desk sergeant she had information about the Elena Vasquez case. Said you were expecting her. It was impossible. Chen had been trying to reach Maria for 2 days. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her apartment appeared abandoned, and Phoenix police had found no trace of her. Yet somehow she had traveled from Arizona to Pennsylvania and walked into the Millbrook Police Department in the middle of the night. "Martinez, I need you to listen very carefully. Do not leave Maria Santos alone. Keep at least 2 officers with her at all times. Don't let her use the bathroom unaccompanied. Don't give her anything to drink or eat until I get there." "Jesus, Chen, you think she's working with Elena?" "I think Elena is Maria Santos." The realization had been building for days, pieces of evidence that hadn't quite fit together suddenly, forming a coherent picture. Maria's nervousness during their diner meeting, her detailed knowledge of Isabella Martinez's case, her insistence on meeting away from official channels, and most importantly, the fact that she had provided Chen with information that wasn't available in any official files. Information that only Isabella Martinez herself could have known. Elena hadn't been watching their meeting from across the street. She had been sitting across the table, playing the role of Maria Santos, feeding Detective Chen carefully selected pieces of the truth. Chen arrived at the police station to find organized chaos. News vans lined the street, reporters shouting questions at anyone in uniform. Word had leaked that the suspect in the warehouse murders was in custody, and the media frenzy was unlike anything Millbrook had ever experienced. Inside, the woman, who claimed to be Maria Santos, sat calmly in interview room 2, her hands folded in her lap, her expression serene. She looked exactly as she had 3 days earlier, middle-aged, tired, worn down by years of fighting for victims' rights. But Chen now noticed details she had missed before. The woman's fingernails were perfectly manicured despite her claims. A financial struggle. Her clothes were expensive, subtly tailored, and her eyes held a calculating intelligence that belonged to someone who had spent 15 years perfecting the art of deception. "Hello, Detective Chen," the woman said as Chen entered the room. "I've been waiting for you. Where's the real Maria Santos?" "Dead, car accident in Phoenix, 2018. Very sad." She was driving home from a victims advocacy conference when her car went off a mountain road. No witnesses, no survivors. The casual admission hit Chen like a physical blow. Elena had been replacing her victims' identities for years, stepping into their lives so completely that even their friends and colleagues didn't notice the difference. "How many people have you killed, Isabella?" "That's not my name anymore. Isabella Martinez died in Chicago 15 years ago, just like your uncle killed her. I'm Elena Vasquez now, or Maria Santos, or whoever I need to be to get the job done." Elena reached into her purse and placed a small digital recorder on the table between them. "I thought you might want to hear something interesting." She pressed play. Captain Rodriguez's voice filled the room, distorted by phone static, but unmistakably his. "Sarah, you need to understand something. The Isabella Martinez case. There was more to it than what's in the files. Things we covered up. Things that could destroy careers if they came out." Shun's voice responded. "What kind of things, Mike?" The protection detail that was supposed to watch Isabella. It wasn't reassigned to another case. It was pulled deliberately. There were people in the department who wanted Thomas Chen's investigation to fail. People who were being paid to look the other way. The recording continued for several more minutes, documenting a conversation that had never happened. Alina had somehow created an audio recording using Chen's voice and Rodriguez's voice, fabricating a confession that painted both of them as corrupt cops involved in Isabella Martinez's betrayal. Impressive, isn't it? Alina said, stopping the playback. Voice synthesis technology has come a long way. With enough sample audio, police interviews, phone calls, recorded statements, I can make you say anything I want. What do you want from me? I want you to understand what Isabella Martinez felt when she realized that everyone she trusted had betrayed her. I want you to experience that moment when you discover that the system you've dedicated your life to protecting is fundamentally corrupt. Alina pulled out her phone and showed Chen a series of text messages, all apparently sent from Chen's number to various news outlets. The messages contained details about the warehouse murders that hadn't been released to the public, along with claims that Chen had been covering up evidence to protect corrupt colleagues. I sent these about an hour ago, Alina explained. By now, Internal Affairs has probably opened an investigation. Your phone records will show the messages came from your device. Your colleagues will start questioning your integrity. Your career will be destroyed, just like Isabella's life was destroyed. You're insane. Am I? Or am I the only person in this room who understands how justice really works? Alina leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Tell me, Detective Chen, when you catch the bad guys, do they always go to prison? When you solve cases, does the system always protect the innocent? Chen wanted to argue, to defend the badge she wore and the oath she had taken, but she had seen too much, worked too many cases where technicalities freed the guilty and bureaucracy failed the victims. Sometimes the system fails, Chen admitted, but that doesn't justify murder, doesn't it? Your uncle Thomas Chen is dead. The FBI agents who failed Isabella are dead. The prosecutors who let bureaucracy delay justice are dead. For the first time in 15 years, there are consequences for their actions. You're not delivering justice. You're just creating more victims, am I? Marcus Williams was laundering money for criminal organizations through his real estate deals. Rebecca Torres was helping financial institutions cover up fraud cases. David Park was selling security software with intentional backdoors to organized crime syndicates. Alina pulled out a thick folder filled with documents, photographs, and financial records. I spent 3 years documenting their crimes before I killed them. They weren't innocent people, Detective Chen. They were part of the same corrupt system that destroyed Isabella Martinez. Chen stared at the evidence, recognizing the same meticulous attention to detail that had characterized Isabella's original investigation into Thomas Chen. Every bank record was verified. Every photograph was time-stamped and authenticated. Every document was cross-referenced and confirmed. Alina hadn't just killed 3 people. She had built airtight cases against them first, ensuring that her victims were genuinely guilty of the crimes she accused them of. This doesn't change anything, Chen said, but her voice lacked conviction, doesn't it? You've spent 8 years trying to prove that the Chen name could stand for justice instead of corruption. But what if justice requires becoming the very thing you've sworn to fight against? Alina stood up, moving toward the door with casual confidence. Oh, and Detective Chen. Captain Rodriguez isn't victim number 5 anymore. He's been moved up on the list. What do you mean? Check your phone. Chen looked down to find a text. Message from Rodriguez's number. Sarah, I can't live with the guilt anymore. By the time you read this, it will be over. I'm sorry for everything. Alina smiled, an expression of pure satisfaction. He should be pulling the trigger right about now. The sound of Chun's scream echoed through the police station, as Elena Vasquez walked calmly out of interview room 2, past the shocked officers, and into the chaos of the media circus outside. By the time Chen recovered enough to pursue her, Elena had vanished once again, leaving behind only questions and the growing certainty that the final confrontation was yet to come. The gunshot that killed Captain Michael Rodriguez was heard by his neighbors at exactly 7:42 a.m. By the time paramedics arrived at his suburban home, he had been dead for several minutes. The suicide note found on his kitchen table matched his handwriting perfectly, and the .38 revolver in his hand was registered to him. But Detective Chen knew it wasn't suicide. The angle's all wrong, she explained to Detective Martinez as they stood in Rodriguez's living room, surrounded by crime scene photographers and forensic technicians. Mike was left-handed, but the gun was in his right hand. And look at the note. Martinez studied the handwritten confession, which detailed Rodriguez's failures in the Isabella Martinez case and his guilt over Miguel's death. Looks legitimate to me. Same handwriting as his police reports. It's too perfect. Mike never wrote this neatly, even in official documents. And he always signed his name, M. Rodriguez, not Michael Rodriguez like this. Elena had studied Rodriguez for years, learning his mannerisms, his speech patterns, his psychological vulnerabilities. She had used voice synthesis technology to create fake phone calls, had somehow convinced him to meet her at his house, and had executed him while making it appear to be suicide, just as she had done with Dr. Patricia Hoffman. "Chen, I need to ask you something," Martinez said, lowering his voice. "Internal Affairs called an hour ago. They've got questions about your conduct in this investigation. Something about evidence tampering and unauthorized communications with suspects." The fabricated audio recording Elena had played was already working its way through the system, poisoning Chen's reputation and isolating her from potential allies. Soon, she would be fighting Elena alone, exactly as Isabella Martinez had fought Thomas Chen's conspiracy alone. "They're suspending you, pending investigation," Martinez continued reluctantly. "Badge and gun. I'm sorry, Sarah." Chen handed over her service weapon and detective shield, feeling 15 years of career accomplishment evaporate in an instant. But as she walked out of Rodriguez's house, she realized that Elena had made a crucial mistake by destroying Chen's official authority. Elena had freed her from the constraints of police procedure and legal protocol. Chen was no longer bound by warrant requirements, Miranda rights, or rules of evidence that she could fight Elena on Elena's own terms. Chen's first stop was a storage unit facility on the outskirts of Millbrook, where she had kept evidence from unsolved cases that technically belonged to the department. Badge or no badge, she wasn't giving up the hunt, but when she arrived at Unit 47B, she found the lock had been cut and the metal door was standing open. Inside, Elena Vasquez sat on a folding chair, surrounded by boxes of files and evidence bags. She had been waiting. "Hello, Sarah," Elena said, not looking up from the manila folder in her hands. "I hope you don't mind that I borrowed some of your old cases. Fascinating reading. How did you find this place? I've been watching you for 3 years, remember? I know where you buy groceries, where you get your car serviced, where you keep the cases that keep you awake at night." Elena held up a photograph from one of the files, a crime scene image from a domestic violence homicide Chen had worked 2 years earlier. Jennifer Walsh, beaten to death by her husband. You arrested him with overwhelming evidence, but he walked free on a technicality. Something about an illegal search. The warrant was invalid. We couldn't use the evidence. So he's still out there, still beating women, still getting away with it, because the system protects him. Elena sat down the file and looked directly at Chen. "How many cases like this do you have, Sarah? How many guilty people have you watched walk free because of legal loopholes and bureaucratic failures?" Chen didn't answer, but she knew Elena could read the truth in her expression. Every detective carried those cases, the ones where justice slipped away, despite overwhelming evidence of guilt. I counted 47, Alina continued. 47 cases where you identified the perpetrator but couldn't secure a conviction. 47 times the system failed you the same way it failed Isabella Martinez. That doesn't justify what you've done, doesn't it? Tell me, Sarah, what would you do if you could ignore the rules? If you didn't have to worry about warrants, and Miranda rights, and reasonable doubt? How many of those 47 cases would you solve differently? Alina stood up and moved toward a large map of Pennsylvania that she had mounted on the storage unit's wall. Red pins marked locations across the state, dozens of them, creating a pattern that made Chen's blood run cold. I've been busy these past 3 years, Alina explained. While I was building friendships with Marcus, Rebecca, and David, I was also tracking down the people from your unsolved cases, the ones who got away. Each red pin marked a death that had appeared accidental, coincidental, unconnected. A drunk driving accident that killed a rapist who had escaped conviction on a technicality. A house fire that claimed a domestic abuser whose case had been dismissed due to prosecutorial misconduct. A drowning that eliminated a child predator who had been released on a plea bargain. You've been killing them, Chen whispered. I've been delivering the justice you couldn't. Every person marked on this map was guilty of the crimes you investigated. I simply ensured they faced consequences. You're insane, am I? Or am I the only person willing to do what's necessary? Alina moved closer, her voice taking on an almost hypnotic quality. Sarah, you've spent your entire career trying to work within a broken system. You've followed rules that protect criminals and punish victims. You've watched guilty people walk free while their victims suffer in silence. I took an oath, so did Isabella Martinez. She swore to tell the truth, to cooperate with investigators, to trust the system to protect her. And where did that oath get her? Her nephew was dead, her life was destroyed, and the people responsible faced no real consequences. Alina pulled out a small device that looked like a garage door opener. I've wired this storage unit with explosives. 100 to 4, triggered remotely. One button press and everything in here disappears. All your unsolved cases, all the evidence of my activities, all proof that Alina Vasquez ever existed. You're bluffing, am I? I've spent 15 years planning for this moment, Sarah. I've killed dozens of people to get here. Do you really think I'd hesitate to kill one more? Alina held out the detonator. But I'm not going to press this button. You are? What? This is your choice, Sarah. You can maintain your faith in a broken system. Call for backup. Try to arrest me through proper channels. And while you're filling out paperwork and waiting for warrants, I'll disappear again. I'll continue killing the people who escaped your justice, one by one, until there's no one left. Elena's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Or you can press this button. Destroy the evidence, cover up my crimes, become complicit in everything I've done. Why would I do that? Because once you press that button, once you cross that line, you'll understand what Isabella Martinez learned 15 years ago. The system doesn't deliver justice. People do. And sometimes, to protect the innocent, you have to become the thing you've sworn to fight against. Alina set the detonator on top of one of the evidence boxes and stepped back. Choose, Detective Chen. Maintain your integrity and let me continue killing, or compromise your principles and save lives. Chen stared at the small device, understanding, with crystalline clarity, that this moment would define the rest of her life. Whatever choice she made would transform her into someone she didn't recognize, just as Isabella Martinez had been transformed into Alina Vasquez. There's a third option, Chen said finally. Is there? Asterisk, I arrest you. Right here, right now. Without backup, without a warrant, without reading you your rights. Alina smiled, the expression both predatory and approving. That would be highly illegal, Detective Chen. Evidence obtained through unlawful arrest would be inadmissible in court. I'd walk free, just like all those people from your unsolved cases. Maybe. But at least I'd stop you from killing anyone else. Would you? I've been planning this for 15 years, Sarah. Do you really think I don't have contingency plans? Elena pulled out her phone and showed Chen a live video feed. The image showed a school playground filled with children during recess. Chen recognized it immediately, Millbrook Elementary, where Rodriguez's daughter attended 3rd grade. The vest I'm wearing isn't just a fashion choice, Elena explained. It's packed with enough explosive material to level a city block. If my heart stops beating, if I don't input a code every 12 hours, the signal goes to receivers I've placed around the school. Chen felt the world tilt beneath her feet. You're threatening children. I'm ensuring your cooperation. Press the button, Sarah. Destroy the evidence. Cross the line. And the children stay safe. This is madness. This is justice. Isabella Martinez was destroyed because good people made bad choices when it mattered most. Now you get to make the same choice. Save the children by becoming complicit in murder, or maintain your principles and let innocents die. Elena stepped toward the storage unit's exit. You have 60 seconds to decide, Detective Chen. After that, I walk away, and you never see me again. But the threat to those children remains active until someone stops me permanently. Chen picked up the detonator, her hands shaking with rage and desperation. Every instinct told her to call for backup, to follow proper procedure, to trust the system she had served faithfully for 8 years. But the system had failed Isabella Martinez. It had failed the victims in her unsolved cases. And now it was about to fail the children at Millbrook Elementary. Chen looked at Elena one last time. If I do this, if I press this button, what happens next? Then you understand what I've learned, Sarah. Sometimes justice requires becoming the monster. The explosion that destroyed Storage Unit 47B was heard 3 miles away. The explosion lit up the pre-dawn sky like a miniature sun, sending debris raining down across the storage facility parking lot. Detective Chen found herself thrown 20 feet from the blast zone, her ears ringing, her clothes singed and torn. Elena was gone. Chen struggled to her feet, ignoring the pain in her ribs and the taste of blood in her mouth. The storage unit was completely destroyed, reduced to twisted metal and scattered concrete. Every piece of evidence, every file, every connection to Elena's crimes had been vaporized in an instant. But something was wrong. Chen had pressed the detonator, yes, but she had thrown it as far as possible before the explosion. The blast had been much larger than expected, and Elena had been standing too close to have escaped unharmed, unless she had never intended to survive. Chun's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID showed her own name. "Hello, Sarah," Elena's voice said through the speaker. "Congratulations. You've just taken your first step into my world. Where are you? The explosion should have killed you. Should have, yes. But I've been planning this moment for 15 years. Did you really think I'd leave my survival to chance?" Elena's voice was different now, stripped of the false warmth she had used as Maria Santos. This was the real Elena, cold and calculating, speaking to an equal rather than a target. "The woman you met in the storage unit wasn't me, Sarah. That was Diane Foster, a former actress I hired 6 months ago to play my role. She thought she was participating in an elaborate film project about police corruption. Poor thing never knew she was going to die for her performance." Chen felt sick. Another innocent victim. Another life sacrificed to Elena's obsession with revenge. "But here's what's beautiful about this moment," Elena continued. "You pressed that button knowing it would kill someone. You chose to become a killer rather than risk harm to those children. You've crossed the line, Sarah. You understand now what Isabella Martinez learned 15 years ago. I'm nothing like you, aren't you? Tell me, How are you going to explain the explosion to your colleagues? How are you going to justify destroying evidence in an active murder investigation? How are you going to prove your innocence when all the physical evidence is gone? Chen realized with growing horror that Alina was right. She had no badge, no official authority, and now no credible explanation for why she had been at the storage facility when it exploded. The fabricated audio recordings would paint her as a corrupt cop trying to cover up her involvement in Isabella Martinez's case. I've done you a favor, Sarah. I've freed you from the constraints that have been holding you back. No more warrants, no more Miranda rights, no more watching guilty people walk free on technicalities. You're insane if you think I'm going to help you. Help me? Oh, Sarah, you misunderstand. I don't need your help anymore. I need your opposition. Laugh was cold and empty. Isabella Martinez spent 15 years becoming Alina Vasquez, so she could destroy the people who failed her. But Alina Vasquez isn't the end of the story. She's just another identity to be discarded when her usefulness ends. What are you talking about? I'm talking about evolution, Sarah. About becoming something beyond victim and victimizer. Isabella Martinez was destroyed by the system. Alina Vasquez destroyed the system's representatives. But my final identity will be something entirely new. Chen heard the sound of a car engine starting in the background of the call. The children at Millbrook Elementary are still in danger, Alina continued. The explosives are real. The dead man's switch is active. But I'm not the only one who can disarm them anymore. What do you mean? I've given you the detonation codes, Sarah. They're hidden in a place only you would think to look. Find them, disarm the bombs, save the children. But understand that doing so will require you to think like me, to become like me. The line went dead. Chen stared at her phone, trying to process what she had just heard. Alina had somehow transferred responsibility for the bombs to her, creating a scenario where Chen would have to embrace Alina's methods to save innocent lives. But where would Alina hide detonation codes that only Chen would think to look? The answer came to her with sickening certainty. Chen's apartment. Alina had been watching her for 3 years, had probably been inside her home multiple times, studying her habits and her personal belongings. Chen commandeered a patrol car and raced across town, running red lights and ignoring radio calls from dispatch. She burst into her apartment to find everything exactly as she had left it, but somehow wrong in ways she couldn't immediately identify. Books were arranged differently on her shelves. Photographs had been moved slightly on her mantelpiece. Her laptop had been opened and closed, leaving the screen at a different angle than she remembered. Alina had been living in her space, learning her most intimate routines, preparing for this moment. Chen tore through her apartment, searching for anything that didn't belong. She found it in the last place she looked, inside her gun safe, wrapped around her backup service weapon, a single sheet of paper with a series of numbers and symbols, followed by a handwritten note. To disarm the bombs, you must first understand why they exist. The codes are useless without the context. Find the place where Isabella Martinez died, and you'll find the key to saving those children. But remember, Sarah, once you use these codes, you become complicit in everything I've done. There's no going back. The paper was signed with 2 names, Isabella Martinez and Alina Vasquez, with a 3rd signature line left blank, waiting for Chen to add her own name to the list of identities. Chen looked at the clock on her nightstand. 9:47 a.m. School was in session. Hundreds of children were sitting in classrooms, playing on playgrounds, completely unaware that their lives hung in the balance of a madwoman's game. She had less than 3 hours before Elena's 12-hour timer expired, and the bombs detonated automatically, and to save them, she would have to travel to Chicago, to the exact spot where Miguel Martinez had died 15 years earlier, and confront the truth that Elena had been trying to teach her all along. Sometimes justice required becoming. The monster. Chen grabbed her personal firearm, a .22 pistol. She kept for home protection and headed for the door. She was no longer Detective Sarah Chen, sworn officer of the law. She was Sarah Chen, vigilante, about to cross every line she had ever sworn to defend. But as she drove toward Chicago, one thought consumed her. What if Alina was right? What if the system was so fundamentally broken that the only way to protect innocent people was to abandon it entirely? By the time she reached the Illinois border, Chen had already begun planning Elena's murder. The intersection of North Ashland and West Augusta in Chicago looked different than Chen had expected. 15 years of urban development had transformed the area where Miguel Martinez died, replacing empty lots with trendy restaurants and converting old warehouses into upscale condominiums. But the bloodstain was still there. Chen knelt on the sidewalk, studying the faint discoloration in the concrete that marked the exact spot where a 6-year-old boy had taken his last breath. City crews had tried to clean it, had painted over it multiple times, but the stain always bled through. Eventually, some wounds never heal. You found it. Chen spun around to find Alina standing 20 feet away, no longer bothering with disguises or false identities. This was Isabella Martinez as she truly was, hollow-eyed, gaunt, carrying 15 years of rage in her posture like a physical. Wait, the codes? Chen demanded. Give me the codes to disarm the bombs. The codes are already here, Sarah. Right where Miguel died. But first, you need to understand what this place really means. Alina walked closer, her steps deliberate and measured. Isabella Martinez died here too, even though her body kept breathing for 15 more years. When that car hit Miguel, when she held his broken body while waiting for an ambulance that took 47 minutes to arrive, she realized something fundamental about the world. That bad things happen to good people. That doesn't justify mass murder. That's not what she learned, Alina corrected. She learned that the people who promise protection are the most dangerous of all, because they make you believe safety is possible, make you trust in systems and institutions and authorities, and then they abandon you when you need them most. Alina knelt beside Chen on the blood-stained concrete. Do you know what Isabella's last words were to Miguel before he lost consciousness? Chen remained silent. Don't worry, mijo. The police are coming. They'll help us. But the police didn't come for 47 minutes. Sarah, 47 minutes of watching a little boy die while believing that help was on the way. Alina pulled out a small device that looked like a smartphone. The detonation codes are in this phone. Miguel's birthday, followed by the exact time he died. But to access them, you have to answer one question truthfully. What question? If you could go back to that storage unit, knowing what you know now, would you still press the detonator? Chen thought about Diane Foster, the actress who had died believing she was participating in a film project. An innocent woman who had been manipulated and murdered for Elena's elaborate revenge plot. But she also thought about the children at Millbrook Elementary, playing on swings and slides while bombs waited beneath their playground. Yes, Chen admitted, I'd press it again. Alina smiled, the first genuine expression Chen had seen from her. Then you understand. The system forces good people to make impossible choices. It turns victims into perpetrators and heroes into criminals. Alina handed over the phone. The codes are in the photo gallery. Pictures of Miguel's birthday party, the last one he ever had. The timestamp on each photo is part of the sequence. Chen scrolled through the images, seeing a happy 6-year-old boy blowing out candles, opening presents, hugging his Aunt Isabella. The innocence in those photographs made the present moment even more obscene. Why are you doing this? Chen asked. Why involve innocent children? Because children represent hope, Sarah. They represent the future we're all fighting to protect. I needed you to understand that sometimes protecting that future requires sacrificing your own soul. Chen found the detonation codes buried in the photo metadata. 6 numbers, corresponding to Miguel's birth date and the time of his death. But as she prepared to dial the disarming sequence, Alina spoke again. There's something else you need to know. The bombs aren't just at the elementary school. Chen's blood turned to ice. Where else? Your apartment building, Detective Martinez's house, the Millbrook Police Department. Every place you've ever felt safe. Every person you've ever trusted. I've been preparing for this day for 3 years, Sarah. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. You're lying. Am I? Call Martinez. Ask him to check his basement. Chen dialed Martinez's number with trembling fingers. He answered on the first ring. Chen, where the hell are you? Internal affairs is going crazy, and there are reports of an explosion at some storage facility. Martinez, I need you to check your basement. Right now. Look for anything that doesn't belong. What? Sarah, you're scaring me. Just do it, please. Chen could hear Martinez moving through his house, his footsteps echoing on wooden stairs. Then silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. Jesus Christ, Sarah, there's a briefcase down here. It wasn't here yesterday. It's got wires coming out of it, and some kind of digital timer. Get out of the house, now. Call the bomb squad. Sarah, what's going on? Elena's been planning this for years. She's wired multiple locations with explosives. Get everyone away. From the police station, away from residential areas. She's forcing me to choose who lives and who dies. Chen ended the call and turned back to Alina. How many bombs? 17. Scattered across locations that represent your life and career. Your apartment building houses 43 families. The police station has 62 people working today's shift. The elementary school has 412 students. Voice remained calm, clinical, as if she were discussing weather patterns rather than mass casualties. The detonation codes I gave you will only disarm 3 devices. You have to choose which locations to save. This is insane. This is reality. Isabella Martinez faced the same choice 15 years ago. She could protect herself by staying silent about Thomas Chen's corruption, or she could expose the truth and put herself and Miguel at risk. She chose justice, and Miguel died for her decision. That's not the same thing, isn't it? You're a detective, Sarah. Every case you work, every investigation you pursue, every arrest you make puts innocent people at risk. Criminals retaliate against witnesses. Gang members target families of police officers. Your pursuit of justice creates casualties. Elena checked her watch. You have 97 minutes before the automatic detonation sequence begins. 3 codes, 17 bombs. Choose wisely. Chen stared at the phone containing the disarming codes, understanding that Alina had created the perfect moral trap. No matter what choice she made, innocent people would die. The only question was which innocent people she would choose to save. But, as Chen studied the detonation codes more carefully, she noticed something Alina had overlooked. The phone contained more than just pictures of Miguel's birthday party. There were also photos of the warehouse crime scene, images that only the killer could have taken, and buried in the metadata of those crime scene photos were GPS coordinates. Alina had just revealed the location of her base of operations. Chen had found the codes she needed, not the ones Elena had given her, but the coordinates that would lead to Elena's hideout, and, hopefully, the master control for all 17 bombs. I'm not choosing, Chen announced. I'm going to disarm all of them. That's impossible. I only gave you 3 codes. You gave me more than you realized. Chen held up the phone, showing Alina the GPS coordinates embedded in the crime scene photos. You made a mistake. The same mistake every criminal makes eventually. You got careless. For the first time, Elena's confidence wavered. Those coordinates lead to an abandoned building. Even if you find it, the bombs will detonate automatically if I don't input the delay codes. Then you'd better hope I find you in time. Chen turned and ran toward her car, leaving Alina standing alone on the blood-stained sidewalk where her nephew had died. Behind her, she could hear Elena's voice calling out, no longer calm and controlled, but desperate and afraid. Sarah, you don't understand. The system at the hideout is automated. If you try to force your way in, everything detonates immediately. But Chen was already driving away, following the GPS coordinates toward a confrontation that would determine whether she remained Detective Sarah Chen or became something entirely different. Something that Elena Vasquez had been carefully crafting for 3 years, because Elena's final lesson wasn't about choosing between saving different groups of innocent people. It was about learning that sometimes, to stop a monster, you had to become one yourself. The GPS coordinates led Chen to an abandoned textile factory on Chicago's south side, a massive brick building that had been shuttered for over a decade. Broken windows stared down at her like empty eye sockets, and rust stains streaked the walls like dried blood. But this wasn't just Elena's hideout. It was a shrine. Chen found the building's service entrance unlocked, the heavy metal door swinging open with a prolonged creak that echoed through empty corridors. Inside, the smell of decay mixed with something else, the acrid scent of electronic equipment and chemical preservatives. Elena had transformed the factory's main floor into a command center that bordered on obsession. Dozens of computer monitors displayed live feeds from around Millbrook, the elementary school playground, the police station parking lot, Chen's apartment building. Red digital clocks counted down on each screen. 47 minutes, 32 seconds. But it was the walls that revealed the true depth of Elena's madness. Every surface was covered with photographs, documents, and newspaper clippings arranged in a complex web of connections. Pictures of Isabella Martinez as a teenager, smiling and innocent, were connected by red string to crime scene photos from the warehouse murders. FBI case files were pinned next to forged identity documents, and in the center of it all, like the eye of a hurricane, was a single photograph of Miguel Martinez blowing out birthday candles. "Welcome to my real home," Elena's voice came from speakers hidden throughout the factory. "This is where Isabella Martinez came to die, and Elena Vasquez was born." Chen followed the voice deeper into the building, past workstations filled with identity forging equipment, past walls covered with surveillance photos of her daily routines. In one corner stood a perfect replica of Chen's office at the Millbrook Police Department, complete with copies of her case files and personal belongings. "You've been studying me for years," Chen called out, her voice echoing in the vast space. "I've been creating you," Elena's voice corrected. "Every case I gave you, every unsolved murder that kept you awake at night, every moment of frustration with the system. I orchestrated all of it." Chen stopped walking. "What do you mean?" "The domestic violence case where Jennifer Walsh's killer walked free. I made sure his defense attorney knew about the illegal search. The child predator who was released on a plea bargain. I provided his lawyer with evidence of prosecutorial misconduct. The rapist who escaped conviction on a technicality. I filed the motion that got the case dismissed." The truth hit Chen like a physical blow. For 3 years, Elena had been sabotaging her cases, ensuring that guilty people escaped justice, creating the exact frustration and disillusionment that would make Chen receptive to vigilante solutions. "You've been destroying my faith in the system. I've been showing you the truth about the system. Every failure, every disappointment, every moment when justice slipped away. That's the reality Isabella Martinez lived with every day. Now, you know how it feels." Chen found Elena in the factory's old executive office, sitting behind a desk surrounded by monitors showing the bomb locations. She looked smaller than Chen remembered, more fragile, as if the weight of 15 years of planning had finally begun to crush her. "The bombs," Chen demanded. "Disarm them." "I can't," Elena replied simply. "The system is automated now. Once activated, it can only be stopped by someone with the correct biometric signature. Your signature. No, yours." Elena gestured to a scanner on the desk. "I've been collecting samples of your DNA for 3 years, Sarah. hair from your office chair, saliva from coffee cups, skin cells from your steering wheel. I programmed the disarming system to recognize only you. Why? Because this was never about revenge. It was about transformation. Isabella Martinez couldn't save Miguel because she believed in a system that didn't exist. Elena Vasquez couldn't find peace through murder because killing the symptoms doesn't cure the disease. Elena stood up, moving toward a wall covered with photographs of all her victims. But you, Sarah, you have the potential to become something better. Someone who understands that justice and law aren't the same thing. You're asking me to become a killer. I'm asking you to become effective. How many children die while you wait for warrants? How many victims suffer while you follow procedures that protect criminals? Chen approached the biometric scanner, studying the complex array of equipment surrounding it. This wasn't just a bomb disarming system. It was a complete database of criminal activity, containing evidence that could solve hundreds of unsolved cases. If I use this system, if I access this information, I become part of your network. You become part of the solution. Every piece of evidence in this database was obtained illegally, but it's all accurate. Financial records of corrupt officials, surveillance footage of unprosecuted crimes, confessions obtained through methods no court would accept. Alina moved to stand beside Chen, no longer predator and prey, but to women facing an impossible choice. Use the scanner, Sarah. Disarm the bombs. Save the children. But understand that accessing this system makes you complicit in everything I've done. You'll have the power to solve every unsolved case in your files, but you'll have to abandon everything you believed about law and order. Chen placed her hand on the scanner, feeling the device analyze her fingerprints and DNA signature. The timer on the monitors showed 23 minutes, 14 seconds. Why did you really do this, Isabella? Because Miguel deserved better. Because Isabella Martinez deserved better. Because you deserve better than a system that forces good people to fail. The scanner beeped, accepting Chen's biometric signature. Suddenly, every monitor in the factory displayed the same message. Disarmament authorized. Select targets. Chen realized with growing horror that Elena's final trap was more sophisticated than she had imagined. The system would let her disarm all 17 bombs, but only if she agreed to take Elena's place as administrator of the criminal database. She would save the children, but she would spend the rest of her life with access to illegally obtained evidence of unpunished crimes. Every day, she would know exactly who was getting away with murder, rape, theft, and corruption. Every day, she would have to choose between following the law and delivering justice. Alina had spent 15 years becoming the perfect killer so she could transform Sarah Chen into the perfect judge. Make your choice, Sarah. Save everyone and become like me, or maintain your integrity and let innocent people die. Chun's finger hovered over the disarmament button, understanding that this moment would define not just her own future, but the future of every victim who had ever been failed by the system. In 23 minutes and 7 seconds, she would discover whether justice required becoming the monster, or whether there was still a third option. Alina hadn't considered. Chen spent 18 hours walking the streets of Philadelphia, carrying the envelope that contained Margaret Collins's identity and a future she wasn't sure she wanted. Every step took her further from the police officer she had been, and closer to something she couldn't yet name. The federal task force had given her everything. Alina promised the power to pursue justice without legal constraints, the authority to protect victims when the system failed them, the ability to ensure that criminals faced consequences, regardless of technicalities. But it had also cost her everything she thought she believed about right and wrong. At 2:47 a.m., Chen found herself standing outside the Philadelphia courthouse where Thomas Chen had been tried 15 years earlier. The building looked different in the darkness, more imposing, its neoclassical columns casting shadows that resembled prison bars. This was where Isabella Martinez had testified against her employer, where she had believed that telling the truth would lead to justice, where she had first learned that the system protected those with power rather than those seeking protection. Chun's phone rang. The caller ID showed Meridian Solutions. "Hello, Sarah." Dr. Foster's voice was warm, almost maternal. "I thought you might be struggling with your decision. How did you know where I was?" "The same way Alina knew your routines for 3 years. We've been watching, Sarah, not to harm you, but to understand you, to know when you were ready to join us." Chen looked up at the courthouse steps, imagining Isabella Martinez walking up those same stairs 16 years ago, carrying evidence that would destroy her life in the name of justice. "Tell me about Margaret Collins, the real one, before you killed her." Margaret Collins was 73 years old and had served on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court for 18 years. She was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 6 months ago and given 3 weeks to live. Dr. Foster's voice remained steady, clinical. "She died in her sleep, Sarah. Natural causes. We simply, expedited the paperwork process for replacing her position. You didn't kill her. Not every identity we assume requires murder. Sometimes we simply wait for natural opportunities. Margaret Collins wanted her legacy to be a justice system that actually protected victims. She would approve of what we're doing." Chen realized that the Justice Collective had evolved beyond Elena's crude methods of assassination and identity theft. They had become something more sophisticated, more patient, more systematic in their infiltration of legal institutions. "How many judges are part of your organization?" "Enough to ensure that justice is served consistently, regardless of what defense attorneys argue or what prosecutorial errors occur." "You're talking about corrupting the entire judicial system." "We're talking about fixing it. When a domestic violence case comes before one of our judges, the victim receives protection and the abuser receives appropriate sentencing. When a corporate crime case involves environmental damage, the executives responsible face real consequences rather than token fines." Dr. Foster paused, allowing Chen to process the implications. "We've eliminated the randomness that allowed criminals to escape justice through forum shopping and judicial lottery systems." Chen understood that accepting Margaret Collins's identity would make her complicit in a conspiracy that spanned multiple states and federal jurisdictions. But it would also give her the power to ensure that cases like Isabella Martinez's never ended in tragedy again. "If I become Margaret Collins, what happens to Sarah Chen?" "Sarah Chen dies in a hiking accident in the Appalachian Mountains. Tragic, but not suspicious. Her body is never recovered, and her colleagues remember her as a dedicated federal agent who died serving her country." "And Margaret Collins?" "Margaret Collins becomes the kind of judge who ensures that victims receive justice and criminals receive consequences. She makes sure that technicalities don't protect the guilty and that bureaucratic failures don't doom the innocent." Chen thought about the hundreds of cases she had worked over the past decade, the thousands of victims she had encountered, the countless times she had watched guilty people walk free because the system protected their rights more effectively than it protected their victims' lives. Alina had been right about the fundamental problem. The system was designed to prevent government abuse of power, but it had become so constrained by its own safeguards that it couldn't effectively protect the people it was supposed to serve. "Dr. Foster, if I accept this position, if I become Margaret Collins, what's to stop me from becoming like Alina? What prevents the power from corrupting me completely?" "Nothing," Dr. Foster admitted. "Every member of our organization faces that risk every day. Power without accountability is dangerous, regardless of the intentions behind it." "Then why do it?" "Because the alternative is watching innocent people suffer while guilty people prosper. Because Miguel Martinez deserved better. Because Isabella Martinez deserved better. Because you deserve better than a system that forces good people to fail." Chen opened the envelope and examined the documents inside. Birth certificate, social security card, judicial appointment papers, financial records, a complete identity that would transform her from a federal agent operating in gray areas to a Supreme Court justice with ultimate authority over life and death decisions. "I need to know something," Chen said finally. "Elena's plan, the warehouse murders, the psychological manipulation, the elaborate revenge scheme, was that all designed to recruit me?" "Elena thought she was recruiting you for revenge. She wanted to transform you into another version of herself, someone consumed by anger at the system's failures. But we were recruiting you for something different." "What?" "Leadership. Elena Vasquez was brilliant, but she was driven by trauma and rage. We needed someone who could see beyond revenge. Someone who could build something lasting instead of just destroying what already existed." Dr. Foster moved closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Sarah, you've spent the past 5 years proving that our methods work. Your task force has achieved results that traditional law enforcement never could. You've saved lives that would have been lost to bureaucracy and legal technicalities. I've also violated every principle I swore to uphold. You've evolved beyond principles that were designed for a different world. The criminals we face today don't respect constitutional protections or legal procedures. They exploit them." Chen looked around the abandoned church, seeing it as Elena might have a place where faith had been abandoned, where promises of salvation had proven empty, where people had once gathered seeking answers that never came. "If I become Margaret Collins, what happens to the federal task force?" "It continues under new leadership. We have other candidates, other people who've learned the same lessons you've learned. The work goes on." Chen realized that the Justice Collective wasn't just a network of vigilantes. It was a self-perpetuating system designed to recruit and train law enforcement professionals who could operate effectively outside legal constraints. Elena Vasquez had created an organization that would outlive her, outlive any individual member, outlive any attempt to stop it through traditional law enforcement methods. "How do I know you won't betray me the same way the system betrayed Isabella Martinez?" "You don't. Trust is always a risk, Sarah. But we've proven our commitment through action. We've protected victims when no one else would, delivered justice when the courts failed, eliminated threats that would have claimed countless innocent lives." Dr. Foster held out a pen, signed the documents. "Sarah, become Margaret Collins. Use your position to ensure that cases like Elena's never create another network like ours." Chen took the pen, understanding that her signature would complete a transformation that had begun 5 years earlier, when she first chose to operate outside legal boundaries. But as she prepared to sign, her phone buzzed with an emergency alert from the federal task force. Children were missing in Philadelphia. A trafficking ring had kidnapped 6 kids from local schools, and traditional investigative methods were yielding no results. Chen looked at the documents, then at Dr. Foster, then at the phone displaying the missing children's photographs. She had a choice: sign the papers and gain the power to ensure justice was served systematically for decades to come, or remain Sarah Chen and handle this case using the illegal but effective methods her task force had perfected. Chen put down the pen and picked up her phone. "I need to save those children first," she told Dr. Foster. "Then we'll talk about my future." But as Chen walked out of the abandoned church, she realized that her choice had already been made. She would always choose immediate action over long-term planning, direct intervention over systematic reform. She had become exactly what Elena wanted, someone willing to sacrifice everything for the protection of innocent lives, even if it meant becoming the monster in the process. The Philadelphia trafficking case lasted 72 hours and ended with 6 rescued children and 12 dead criminals. No arrests, no trials, no legal proceedings. Chun's task force had operated with ruthless efficiency, using surveillance techniques that violated every privacy law and interrogation methods that would have been considered torture in any legal context. But the children were alive and safely returned to their families. It was during the post-operation debriefing that Chen received word of Dr. Foster's death. Car accident on Interstate 95, Agent Torres reported, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Vehicle went off an overpass during rush hour traffic. No survivors. Chen knew immediately that it wasn't an accident. Dr. Foster had been eliminated, just as Elena had been eliminated, just as every member of the Justice Collective was eventually eliminated when they knew too much or became too powerful. The organization Elena had created was consuming its own members. There's something else, Torres continued. We found this in Dr. Foster's car. She handed Chen a laptop that had somehow survived the crash. The screen was cracked but functional, displaying a single document titled the Chen Protocol. Chen opened the file to find a detailed psychological profile of herself, written in Elena's precise handwriting. Every decision she had made over the past 5 years, every time she had chosen effectiveness over legality, every moment when she had prioritized results over procedure, all of it had been documented and analyzed. Elena hadn't been trying to recruit Chen for the Justice Collective. She had been studying her, learning her decision-making patterns, mapping her psychological vulnerabilities. Chen was the prototype for something larger. Agent Torres, I need you to run background checks on every member of our task force. Full psychological profiles, family histories, any connections to unsolved cases or mysterious deaths. Why? Because I think we've been infiltrated. Elena spent 3 years studying me, but I don't think I was her only target. The investigation took 6 weeks and revealed a conspiracy that made Lena's elaborate revenge plot look simple by comparison. 11 members of Chen's 20-person task force had histories similar to hers, victims of system failures, who had been recruited specifically because their trauma made them willing to operate outside legal boundaries. They hadn't joined the task force to serve justice. They had been placed there to study and corrupt it. It's brilliant, Chen admitted to Torres as they reviewed the evidence. Elena didn't create the Justice Collective to replace the system. She created it to infiltrate and control the system. Every federal agency, every police department, every court system in the country had been systematically penetrated by people who shared Elena's philosophy that legal justice was an illusion. They weren't working to reform the system from within. They were working to replace it entirely. So what do we do? Torres asked. If we report this, we implicate ourselves. Half our successful operations were only possible because our infiltrated members provided illegal intelligence. Chen realized that Elena's final trap was the most sophisticated of all. She had created a situation where exposing the Justice Collective would destroy the very law enforcement professionals who had achieved the most success in protecting victims and solving cases. We have to choose, Chen said finally. Expose the conspiracy and watch the system revert to its previous ineffectiveness, or become complicit in a shadow organization that operates outside all legal oversight. Elena won, either way. Maybe? Or maybe she gave us the tools to build something better. Chen made a decision that would have horrified the rookie police officer she had been 10 years earlier. Instead of exposing the Justice Collective, she would use her knowledge of their methods to create a legitimate alternative. Torres, how would you feel about starting over? Completely new agency, completely new mandate, completely transparent about our methods and objectives. What kind of agency? One that operates legally but effectively. One that uses Elena's intelligence-gathering techniques but channels them through proper legal procedures. One that protects victims without becoming victimizers. It took 2 years of congressional hearings, bureaucratic negotiations, and political maneuvering. But Chen eventually established the Victim Justice Initiative, a federal agency authorized to investigate cases where traditional law enforcement had failed. The VJI operated with expanded surveillance authorities, streamlined warrant processes, and direct prosecution powers that bypassed many of the legal obstacles that had protected criminals in the past. It was everything Alina had wanted the system to become, but operating within constitutional boundaries rather than outside them. Chen recruited carefully, avoiding anyone with histories of trauma that might make them susceptible to vigilante philosophies. She established oversight mechanisms, psychological evaluations, and rotation policies designed to prevent the kind of obsessive behavior that had consumed Alina. Most importantly, she instituted a principle that Alina had never understood: that means always matter more than the ends. But the Justice Collective wasn't finished with her. The letter arrived on Chen's desk 3 years after the VJI's establishment, delivered through official federal mail channels, but containing a message that chilled her blood. Congratulations on your success, Director Chen. The Victim Justice Initiative has achieved impressive results in its short existence. Over 3,000 cases solved, 12 criminal organizations dismantled, 47 corrupt officials prosecuted successfully. The letter wasn't signed, but Chen recognized the writing style immediately. Elena's precise, analytical tone, even from beyond the grave. However, we've noticed that your organization still operates within legal constraints that allow some criminals to escape justice. We've identified 43 cases where VYI investigations have been hampered by constitutional protections that favor the guilty over the innocent. Chen felt ice form in her stomach as she continued reading. We're prepared to provide assistance with these problematic cases. Attached, you'll find intelligence that will allow you to solve all 43 investigations within the next 6 months. The choice, as always, is yours. The attachment was a flash drive containing terabytes of surveillance footage, financial records, communication, intercepts, and witness statements. All of it illegally obtained, all of it inadmissible in court, all of it absolutely accurate and devastating to the criminals it implicated. Chen plugged in the drive and spent hours reviewing the evidence. Every piece of intelligence was verified through multiple sources. Every document was authenticated with forensic precision. Every surveillance recording was time-stamped and cross-referenced. The Justice Collective had provided her with enough evidence to solve every unsolved case in her files. But using it would require abandoning the legal principles the VJI had been founded on. Chen realized that Elena's organization had evolved beyond her original vision. The Justice Collective wasn't trying to destroy the system anymore. They were trying to corrupt it from within, to prove that even reformed institutions would eventually choose effectiveness over legality when faced with impossible choices. Director Chen. Agent Torres stood in the doorway, holding her own envelope. I just received something you need to see. Torres had been sent similar intelligence, as had every senior member of the VJI. The Justice Collective was making a coordinated offer to the entire organization: accept illegal assistance and solve all their cases, or maintain legal purity and watch criminals escape justice. It's the same choice Elena gave you 5 years ago, Torres observed. Save the innocent by becoming complicit, or maintain your integrity and let victims suffer. Except this time, the stakes are higher. If we accept their help, we legitimize their methods. We prove that even organizations designed to operate legally will eventually choose illegal effectiveness. Chen looked around her office, seeing the photographs of victims whose cases the VJI had solved, the thank you letters from families who had received justice, the awards recognizing their success in reforming federal law enforcement. All of it would be meaningless if she accepted the Justice Collective's offer. But the 43 unsolved cases represented real victims, real families waiting for closure, real criminals who would continue harming people while investigators followed legal procedures that protected the guilty. Director, what do we do? Chen ejected the flash drive and placed it in her desk drawer, next to the photograph of Miguel Martinez that Elena had sent her years earlier. We do our jobs, legally, transparently, within constitutional boundaries, even when it's frustrating, even when criminals escape, even when the system fails. And the 43 cases, We solve them the right way, however long it takes, whatever resources it requires. We build legal cases that will hold up in court." Torres nodded, but Chen could see the doubt in her expression. They both knew that legal methods had already failed in those 43 cases. Following proper procedures would likely mean watching guilty people escape justice, while their victims waited indefinitely for closure. But Chen had learned something from Elena's example. The moment you decided that the ends justified any means, you began the transformation from protector to predator. There was no middle ground, no safe compromise between law and vigilante justice. "Agent Torres, I want you to draft a memo to all VJI personnel. Anyone who receives offers of illegal assistance should report them immediately. Anyone who acts on such offers will be terminated and prosecuted." "Yes, ma'am," and Torres, "include this in the memo. The measure of a justice system isn't how many criminals it punishes, but how many innocents it protects while maintaining its own integrity." Chen spent the rest of the day reviewing the 43 unsolved cases, looking for legal approaches that previous investigators had missed. It was tedious work, requiring patience and creativity rather than the brutal efficiency Elena's methods provided. But it was honest work. At 11:47 p.m., as Chen prepared to leave the office, her computer chimed with an incoming encrypted message. "You chose well, Sarah. Isabella Martinez would be proud." The message was signed "A Friend." But Chen recognized Elena's writing style even 3 years after her death, which meant Elena Vasquez hadn't died in federal prison. She had simply become someone else, just as Isabella Martinez had become Elena Vasquez. Just as the Justice Collective continued recruiting and replacing its members, Chen realized that she would spend the rest of her career fighting an organization that operated by abandoning identities when they became inconvenient, that recruited victims by exploiting their trauma, that achieved justice through methods that made them indistinguishable from the criminals they pursued. But she also realized something else. Elena's greatest failure hadn't been her methods or her targets or her elaborate schemes. It had been her inability to imagine a justice system that could evolve and improve without abandoning its fundamental principles. The VJI represented that possibility, imperfect, constrained, sometimes frustratingly slow, but committed to protecting innocence without becoming predators in the process. Chen deleted the encrypted message and locked the flash drive in her safe, knowing that someday she might be tempted to use Elena's intelligence to solve cases that seemed impossible through legal means. But not today. Today, she would continue being Sarah Chen, federal director, protector of victims, servant of justice, as the law defined it, rather than as trauma demanded it. Even if it meant some criminals would escape. Even if it meant some victims would wait longer for closure. Even if it meant Elena Vasquez, in whatever identity she currently wore, would continue operating in the shadows, recruiting new members for an organization dedicated to proving that legal justice was impossible. The war between law and vigilante justice would continue, but Chen had chosen her side, and she would defend it until the day someone decided she had become too dangerous to the Justice Collective's mission. She suspected that day was coming sooner than she wanted to admit. 5 years have passed since Director Sarah Chen made her final choice between law and vigilante justice. The Victim Justice Initiative has become a model for law enforcement agencies worldwide, proving that effective protection of innocence doesn't require abandoning constitutional principles. The VJI has solved over 15,000 cases using legal methods that previous investigators had dismissed as too time-consuming or resource. Their success rate has inspired reforms in police departments, prosecutor offices, and federal agencies across the country. But Elena's legacy continues to cast shadows over every success. 3 members of Chen's original task force have died in apparent accidents over the past 2 years. Agent Torres was killed in a home invasion robbery where nothing was stolen. Detective Martinez died of food poisoning that medical examiners couldn't trace to any specific toxin. Agent Williams disappeared during a hiking trip in Colorado. His body never recovered. Each death appeared random, unconnected, explicable through conventional means. But Chen recognized Elena's signature in the patterns, the symbolic elements, the poetic justice, the way each victim's death reflected their specific role in dismantling her original network. The Justice Collective was eliminating witnesses. Chen now lives under federal protection. Her location changed every 6 months. Her communications monitored constantly for signs of infiltration. She has become what Isabella Martinez was 15 years ago, a person whose commitment to justice has made her a target for those who profit from injustice. But unlike Isabella, Chen isn't alone. The VJI has grown to over 200 agents, all committed to proving that legal justice can be as effective as vigilante alternatives. They've created a support network that doesn't abandon victims when bureaucracy becomes inconvenient. The flash drive Elena's organization center still sits in Chen's safe, unopened for 5 years. Sometimes, when a particularly difficult case seems impossible to solve through legal means, Chen stares at that drive and wonders what Elena would do. But she's never given in to the temptation, because Chen has learned something Elena never understood. The moment you decide that some lives matter more than others, the moment you choose effectiveness over integrity, you begin the transformation from protector to predator. And once that transformation begins, there's no going back to who you used to be. Elena Vasquez spent 15 years proving that vigilante justice was more effective than legal justice. But Chen has spent 5 years proving something more important, that legal justice can evolve, improve, and adapt without abandoning the principles that separate civilization from chaos. The war between law and revenge continues in shadows across the country. The Justice Collective still recruits victims failed by the system, still eliminates criminals who escape legal prosecution, still offers illegal assistance to law enforcement professionals facing impossible choices. But for every person they recruit, organizations like the VJI recruit to more. For every case they solve through illegal means, legal investigators solve 3 more through patient, methodical, constitutional work. Elena's revolution failed not because her methods were ineffective, but because she underestimated the human capacity for moral growth. She believed that trauma inevitably corrupted, that system failures necessarily created system abandoners. She was wrong. Trauma can also inspire, system failures can motivate reform, and victims can become protectors without becoming predators. The photograph of Miguel Martinez still sits on Chen's desk, not as a reminder of system failure, but as a symbol of the innocent lives that make the struggle for legal justice worthwhile. Every difficult case, every legal obstacle, every moment when vigilante solutions seem more appealing, Chen measures them against that image of a 6-year-old boy who deserved better from the adults. Sworn to protect him, Miguel Martinez died because the system failed Isabella Martinez, but his memory lives on in an organization dedicated to ensuring that system failures no longer create new victims or new vigilantes. Director Sarah Chen goes to sleep each night knowing that somewhere in the darkness, Elena Vasquez, in whatever identity she currently wears, is watching, waiting, recruiting new members for an organization dedicated to proving that legal justice is impossible. But Chen also knows that for every person Elena recruits through trauma and rage, there are 2 more who choose to fight for justice through law rather than despite it. The shadows will always hold secrets, but the light grows stronger every day, and in criminal nights, sometimes that's enough. Soft, contemplative music fades in. What do you think? Criminal Nights family. Was Sarah Chen right to choose legal constraints over vigilante effectiveness? Could you walk away from illegal solutions when they might save innocent lives? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because in the world of criminal justice, every choice has consequences. and every consequence creates new choices. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of moral complexity. If this story made you question everything you thought you knew about justice, you're exactly where Alina Vasquez wanted you to be. And perhaps that's the most terrifying truth of all. Sleep well, criminal knights. And remember, sometimes the monsters aren't hiding in the shadows. Sometimes they're wearing badges and carrying the weight of impossible choices.